Hello everyone. We're back getting ready to work on the black walnut guitar. Today we're going to be working on the fretboard. As you can see in the background, my dog Gemma, she's joining me today. Sometimes she comes down here and sits while I'm working, and so sometimes she's my shop dog. So anyhow, I'm planning on doing a new fretboard. So in the process of taking this fretboard off, I was able to save most of it just for references, and so I can utilize this to take some measurements off the new fretboard. I'll be using this block of black walnut to make my new fretboard. And I might run it through the planer a couple times just to see what is better, but I really like this end right here. It's got a real nice grain pattern to it. And so run that through the table saw and cut off the size that I need. I'll probably cut the fretboard out of the very middle, which might waste a little bit of material, but that's where the best part of the grain is right in the middle. But I got to be careful. I might not be able to, because it looks like there might be a crack going through the middle. So I might have to go off to the side, depending on where this is. This piece of walnut did not come from the tree that the rest of the guitar came from. This piece of walnut came from my uncle, and I'm looking over at my wood pile, and I think I might have another piece as well. Let me take a look at that and see what it looks like. I'll be right back. Yes, I do have another piece here, but it looks like the ends on it are cracked up pretty badly. Trying to compare the grain here to see which one I like better. I think I'm going to stick with my first choice. I'm looking at this, there's a crack. I don't know if you can see it in the camera or not. But right about there, and it runs down about to there, so I'm probably going to have to run off to the side, one side or the other for the fretboard. So this has been curing down here for a couple years now, so it should be good. And yeah, it looks like if I go to one side or the other, I think it'll be okay. So that's what I'm going to have to do. I have to go one side or the other. I'm not going to be able to do the middle grain, which I wish I could, because that was where the grain is the prettiest. But it's just the right length. So I don't have a whole lot of room for error. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting on this and see what we can get done. Got my table saw all set up. My son's out here, he's working on another project. But I'm going to lay this fretboard on here and mark off where I want to do it. I'm going to have to do it off to the side. There's the cut fretboard. I cut it a little bit wide. You can see the mark right there. So I cut a little bit wide on purpose. And so now I'm going to redraw the fretboard on it. But first of all, I'm going to go ahead and narrow this down because I don't need this much wood. This is the new fretboard. I've left enough room on this where if this one fails, I can still cut this in half and still have two more chances to make a good fretboard. Okay, I got the joiner out. And we're going to get this thing nice and flat. I'm going to get it flat on all edges. Okay, so everything's coming together nicely. So now I'm going to take it to the planer, get the planer set up, and we'll get it down to the correct thickness. So here we go. I got ran it through the thickness planer, got it to the right thickness. Does look like it's a little bit thick, but it really isn't, because once I run the radius sander over it, the edges will be nice and thin. So now I just need to mark on it the final shape and then cut that out. So I have the old fretboard clamped to the new fretboard. I'm just going to draw it out, and after I get it drawn out, I'll take it over to the bandsaw and make a couple cuts. And then I'll finish it up with the sander. Okay. So I got the fretboard drawn in. Now it's time to set the bandsaw up and cut this out. I'm going to be very careful to make sure I leave the lines so it gives me some room for sanding. I've clamped the fretboard onto another piece of wood, and I'm just going to take the random orbit sander and run it across these edges just to make sure they're good and straight. I'm not doing anything, any kind of heavy sanding or anything. I just want to make sure that this is good and straight. So I'm going to use this board here as a guide to sand this board. Okay, so I got it set to the right thickness, got the right shape. It's nice and flat and straight through here. So now I got to temporarily mount a pickup ring so I can get the right length for the fretboard. Okay, so I've positioned a pickup where it needs to be, and I'm going to run the fretboard right up against the pickup ring. And then I'm going to come down here and make a mark. Okay, so the fretboard is cut to the right length, right up against the pickup, all up to where I want it on the nut. There's just a tiniest bit, maybe a 32nd of an inch overhang right here on each side, which is good. It gives me plenty of room to do some sanding on the fretboard without hurting the neck. And the thick, I know this looks a little bit too thick right now. It won't be, trust me, once I run that radius file across it, the radius sander across it. and do some final sanding. I'll probably take a good 1/16 off of that. This is exactly where I want it to at this point. So now what I need to do is I need to mark and cut frets from here back, because as I learned, one of the reasons on the old fretboard, one of the reasons that the frets came up is I wasn't able to get the fret grooves cut deep enough, because I cut them after the fretboard was mounted and my saw was touching the body of the guitar. Learned by my mistakes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut from here back those frets, get them down to the proper depth, and I'm going to leave these alone up here because I want as much meat on that as I possibly can. And I'm also going to have to pin it, so I'm going to have to locate the position of the 12th fret. And I'm going to drill down on each side so I can put pins in, and I'm going to drill up here where the screws for the nut were, so I can pin that. That way when I drill it down, it won't rock. This is the original template I made up back in 2010 when I built this guitar, and I modeled it off of my favorite guitar in my collection, which is a Jackson Soloist SL2H. And so I'm going to go ahead and use the same template again, and I'll clamp it to the fretboard, and then I'll make the marks based off of that. Before I put that up there though, I want to mark for the 12th fret. I want to put the old fretboard on it, line it up here, then come down and mark where the 12th fret is, and then I will line the template up with that. That way I can assure that I get this notch the right size, because as I stated before, when the first time I built this fretboard, I made this cut back a little bit too far, leaving a gap between the nut and the fretboard. So I've noticed that when I put the template on here, the template overlaps that to the perfect location of where the nut would be. And when I line the nut up with it, everything lines up perfectly. So if I were to set the nut down on here, and then set that up against the nut, you can see all the frets lined up perfectly. And there's the gap that I need to get rid of. So I need to position the nut perfectly and position the 12th fret, and then put the template on and mark all the other frets, and then I should be good to start cutting. You can see I got the 12th fret lined up. If I come up here and just set the nut in place, it lines up perfectly. So I need to get a good straight edge and an ink pen. I like marking my frets with an ink pen rather than a pencil. I wanted to do close-ups, and I gotta have both hands to do this. So I'm not gonna be able to actually get a video of making a mark, but what I'm doing is lining up the straight edge and then taking a pen and marking the pen and marking the fret. That, again, I can't do that with one hand, so I'm not gonna be able to get a video. But while I'm at it, I gotta show you the coolest pen ever. Looks like a 1/4" drive ratchet, but it is in fact an ink pen. So the first part of the marking is done. So next what I'll do is I'll take the straight edge, put it across the lines, line up, and finish the line. My son is here. Hi, Wyatt.
Hi.
He's gonna get a couple videos. He's gonna get a video of me marking the frets. This is the necklace I use for my inlays, and right now I'm just setting them on there just to make sure I have enough to do what I want to do. I have just enough pieces of necklace left to do my fretboard. I wish I had one more so I could put 2 frets two markers down on the 24th fret. I had to choose if I wanted 2 markers on the 24th fret or 1 marker on the 1st. And I really like having a marker on the 1st fret, so I've chosen to do 1 marker on the 1st and 1 marker on the 24th. So when I first did the guitar, I didn't have anything on the 24th, so it's a little bit different. But I'm going to go ahead and mark the locations of the dots before I do anything else. Okay, to mark the location of the dots, I'm simply lining the straight edge up from corner to corner, drawing a line, going corner to corner, drawing a line, and that puts the right square in the middle. Okay, so I'm up to the 12th fret, and I have to do the 12th fret a little bit different. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So the next one's going to be 12. So because there's going to be 2 inlays going in there, I'm going to find the halfway point on the fret. I'm going to mark a line going this way, and then I will make the X's on each side to make the center points for the markers. So I have all of the locations marked for the dots. The next thing I got to do is cut the fret slots. For that, I'll be using a coping saw. So I'm using what appears to be a standard coping saw. But what I've done, because I wanted my fret slots to be a little bit narrower, and I did this a long time ago, but I've actually taken a hammer and very slightly tapped from the side all the way across the length of the blade. And what that does is it narrows the cut just a little bit to where the tang of the fret fits in the slot nice and firm. So it's a nice snug fit. So what I'm going to do is I've laid my old fretboard on the guitar, and all I need to do, I do not need to cut that fret. So I only need to cut from the 14th fret back. And so I'll start over here and cut. And again, my son has left. I cannot do this one-handed, but I'll line up and just kind of get it started. But I'll also have the blade in the saw to where the teeth are pointing back. I don't know if you can see that. The piece, so you have to pull the saw to get it to cut. And I like cutting frets that way, but I definitely want both hands on this fretboard before I make any cut. There's one slot, takes a while. Had a little bit of a tear out there, but again, there's a lot of sanding that's got to happen on this, the radius and everything, so that will be sanded out. Plus, again, the fretboard's just a tiny bit wider than the finished product, so that will be gone. So there's a reason I left it just a little bit oversized, and it's got to come down some, and it's got to be narrowed some. I'm going to take the slot deeper than normal because I have to come down some. So. All right, I'm happy with that. I'm going to start the next slot. Okay, so I got enough frets cut where I can go ahead and mount the fretboard. So I can lay it up there and line everything up, and I can easily cut this fret and miss the body. So the rest of these are all cut, so I don't have to do those. I might have to clean them up a little bit, but I don't have to go through the rigorous ordeal of cutting them. So what I got to do now, I'm going to lay the old fretboard on top and line up the frets, and then mark the hole for the nut, and then I'll also drill some holes back here, and they'll use that for pin points, so I can pin this fretboard into place. That way when I clamp it down, it's not going to move and get all out of place and mess anything up. So I'm getting close to the glue up. I'm going to drill a test hole in some scrap just to make sure it's the right size bit for the pin I want to use. I think it's going to work. It's a smidgen small, but the next size bit is too big. Yeah, I'm going to use the bigger bit because I don't want to put any pressure on that walnut. I don't want it to split. Alright, so I'm going to do a test fit next. Okay, the fretboard is pinned in place, sitting nice and true, nice and flat all the way back. Same on both sides. I know it looks a little thick. It won't be by the time I'm done sanding it. I promise you that. So, I'm ready to glue up. What I've done is I've cut this piece of pine, and I've drilled the holes oversized so they fit directly over the pins. That way I can clamp solid. I can put this other piece of pine below it. Now the reason I'm using pine is it's softer than walnut, and so any compression should be into the pine and not into the walnut. So now it's time to add some glue and a whole lot of clamps. Make sure those pins are in place. I've seen on videos before where they put tape on the truss rod before the glue up. I'm assuming that's so later down the road if you need to remove the truss rod you can. And I already cannot remove this truss rod, so there's no point in taking that extra step. So I'm just going to glue everything in solid. I think the reason I couldn't get the truss rod out to begin with is I didn't know you weren't supposed to glue it in. and I glued it in on the initial build, if I remember correctly. And so now as a result, I can't get the truss rod out. So the truss rod breaks, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. There's no getting it out of there. So I'm just gonna pile on the glue and clamp everything up. I am very happy to have some glue going back on this thing. Did not like not being able to play it. I'm looking forward to being able to play it again. Alrighty. Alright, it's down there. Add the extra board on top just to adds a little bit more stability in the glue up. Now I have a bunch of clamps, and there's going to be a lot of clamps on here. But the more stability you can get between clamps, the better. Alright, now we gotta get some of the glue off of there. Fretboard is seated very nicely. Nice and flat all the way down. Successful day. Very happy.